Many years ago, a curse was placed on the village of Obosi, making all the women in the village unable to have children. It has been 15 years since the people of Obosi last heard the cry of a baby, and many couples without children cry ceaselessly for the gods to grant them the gift of a child. The last set of children born 15 years ago are fast becoming adults, and this has raised concerns of if the whole village will soon be wiped away by this curse. The people of Obosi are naturally wicked and proud people. They find it hard to forgive, and people in the neighboring villages avoid them because of their wicked and proud nature. One day, this was 15 years ago, a pregnant woman from a neighboring village named Nkem snuck into the village of Obosi to buy some food items from the famous Obosi market. The traders at Obosi market sold cheap goods in comparison to the neighboring markets. So Nkem snuck into Obosi market to buy some items, and on her way back, Nkem felt a sharp pain and began to scream for help. Her water just broke as she was in labor, and when the villagers heard her scream, they rushed to help. But quickly, they noticed that she had a mark on her face, which showed that she was from the neighboring village. When the villagers saw this mark, they all left her to her fate, and she kept crying for help, screaming at the top of her voice in pain, but no one came to her aid, not even the women of Obosi. They all watched her struggle in pain as they walked past her, and when she could not bear the pain any longer, she gave up. Nkem died in agony and excruciating pain. Word got to her village, and her people came to pick up her body, and she was buried in her village. Before Nkem died, she laid a curse on the people of Obosi that the cry of a child will never be heard in the village, and since that day, the village of Obosi has not heard the cry of a baby. No woman has ever taken in or had a child in 15 years. Even the king of the village has done everything imaginable to break this curse, but all efforts have not yielded any results, and the king remains without a heir to the throne. Despite all this, the people of Obosi still remain wicked and proud. They never helped people or even entertained strangers from the neighboring villages, except one woman named Adanna. Adanna was a kind-hearted woman. She was not like the typical Obosi woman, as she was not proud or wicked. Adanna got married to her husband Ikenga 10 years ago, and she cries day and night for the gods to favor her with a child. Her husband Ikenga has given up on the idea of them ever having a child, and he no longer pays attention to his wife Adanna. Ikenga goes around the village, drinking and chasing after women, and this broke Adanna's heart as she begged the gods to compensate her with a child as life was becoming unbearable. Adanna sells food items at the famous Obosi market, and she would leave very early in the morning and return late at night, and this took her mind off all her troubles. One night, after Adanna was done from the market, she took her basket and was heading home. She walked through the bush path and saw a very old woman. At first, she was scared because the path was lonely, but she greeted the woman and asked if she was lost. The woman told her that she was from the neighboring village and lost her way. The woman went on to ask if she could sleep at Adanna's house till when it was bright, so that she could find her way back to her village. Adanna did not know what to do, as she knew her husband would not be so kind to the old woman. Her husband was a very wicked man, and she knew he would never allow an outsider, especially one from another village, to sleep over at their house. But Adanna could not leave the old woman wandering alone in the bush all night, so she allowed the woman to follow her home. When they got home, her husband Ikenga was not home yet, so Adanna hid the old woman in the storeroom where she kept her pots and other household items. There was a little bed there, so she begged the woman to remain quiet as she slept. Few hours later, Ikenga returned home drunk, and he went straight to bed. Adanna was glad, and she could not believe that for once in her life, she was glad that her husband returned home drunk. By morning, Ikenga was still snoring when Adanna rushed to check on the old woman. To her greatest surprise, the woman was no longer in the room. Did she leave early this morning? Thought Adanna when she spotted a small note by the bedside table, which read, "Thank you for your kindness. Your reward will soon be visible." Adanna shrugged her shoulder as she was in no way looking for a reward when she helped the woman. "I hope she gets home safe anyway," said Adanna as she prepared to go to the market. Few days passed, and Adanna became very sick. She visited the village doctor and was told that she was pregnant. Adanna could not believe her ears, and she immediately remembered the note the old woman left her, and tears ran down her eyes. Shortly after, the news of Adanna's pregnancy spread around the village, and all the villagers came to see what had happened. They were all in shock, and when they heard the story of the old woman, they began to play kind to strangers. Some even started visiting neighboring villages with hopes of having a child, but Adanna remained the only woman who was able to conceive in the village of Obosi in over 15 years. 9 months passed, and Adanna gave birth to a son, which she named Odumeje. And Odumeje was also free from the curse. Years passed, and the king of the village died. The villagers had to choose their next king, who would produce a heir to the throne. So everyone agreed that Odumeje was the only man in the village who could have a child. So he was crowned king, and he went to the neighboring village and took a wife. They had children who also married people from other villages when they grew up. And soon later, the village of Obosi was repopulated with strangers who took over the village of the once proud and wicked people. The curse was also lifted, and Obosi became a very welcoming village where no one discriminated against outsiders. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should always be kind and never look down on people. Stop discriminating against people because of culture or race, as we are all humans first before anything else. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.